healthy and warm good afternoon, good evening, good morning to one all present over here. So we are today here present with the fifth lesson in our already going Solidity development class, where we promise to make you a good NFT developer so that you can go and find out some job openings or explore the Web3 domain space as a developer side. And for the today's lecture and webinar, we are going to consider on the Solidity, in which we are be focusing on modifiers and constructors. So before starting, I'll ask Chris to give something about us.
All right. So yeah, we are Token Minds. Just in case you have not been here yet before, we are Token Minds. We are a full service Web3 agency. So we started around 2016 and now working on different projects since then. So we work with more than 100 projects already. So that includes token projects and coin projects. And now, with the recent rise of NFTs, we are working mostly on NFT projects as well. So I'm Chris, the community lead for Token Minds, and this is Hemang, our coach and blockchain developer for Token Minds as well.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for the introduction. Let's see. So for the people who are here for the first time, in the previous webinar, we covered mainly three topics, which included state variables, local variables, and global variables. In case if you may have missed that thing, you don't need to worry about it because state variables are something that we are going to use on our day-to-day classes. Local variables are not something that we are going to use every day, but yeah, global variables are also same as the state variables that we'll be using. So when we are going to use it in today's webinar, I can show you guys around so that you can also catch up. Now let's start with our today's topic, that is modifiers. So function modifiers are used to modify the behavior of a function. We can understand that a modifier aims to change the behavior of a function to which it is attached. For instance, automatically checking a condition prior to executing the function. This is mainly what they are used for. Basically, modifiers are useful because they reduce code redundancy. Let's say if you have written a code that needs to be repeated in 100 functions, then you won't be needing to write the same block of code for the 100 functions, right? So, well, you can reuse the same modifier in the multiple function if you're checking for the same condition for your smart contract, and that's where modifiers are used. But let's ponder on the question that exactly when to use a modifier in the Solidity. So the main use case of modifier is for automatically checking a prior condition to executing a function. Now, if the function does not meet the modifier requirement, an exception is thrown and the function execution stops. And below you can see the syntax of the modifier, and we'll be also seeing this syntax when we are going to develop it, and it looks something like this. So basically, let me take my pen and yeah, so it is the keyword that you are going to use, and the only owner is something which you have named your modifier as. You can also give it any name, let's say modifier token mines. You can give it anything. I mean, missing any here, and you can literally give it anything. And here you see something little to like this. Now let's try and understand what exactly is this. The symbol is called merge wildcard. It is called merge wildcard. Now if the modifier now it merges the function code with the modifier code when this symbol is placed, as I've shown in the example below. In other terms, the body of the function to which the modifier is attached to will be inserted when the special symbol this will appear in the modifier's definition. Using exactly the term which is used in the Solidity docs, we can say that it returns the flow of execution to the original function code. So that makes it this point clear to us, and what exactly the wildcard does. Now let's move forward to our next question, that is constructors. Now, what are constructors? So yeah. So what are constructors? Now, constructor is a special function declared using constructor keyword. Now, if you may have been wondering why I haven't used the why I'm not showing the modifier example on hard coded, well, I'm going to show you in a bit while. Because first, let's complete constructor and modifier theory section, so that we are going to focus only on the on the coding portion. So yeah, so constructor is a special function declared using constructor keyword. It is an optional function, and it is used to initialize the state variables of the contract, and it have several properties. So the properties include: a contract can only have one and only one constructor. You cannot define more than one constructor in a contract. A constructor code is executed once when a contract is created, and it is used to initialize the contract state. Now, after a constructor code is executed, the final code is deployed to the blockchain. This code includes public functions and code reachable through the public functions. Remember, I have been using the getter function. So, the constructor code or any internal method used by only constructor are not included in the final code. Next point includes a constructor can either be public or internal. It can never be external. And an internal constructor marks the contract as abstract. And in case no constructor is defined, a default constructor is always present in the contract. So let's go and see more about on the coding section. So we go here. This little website is known as the Remix ID. It is an online ID which is used to which provides environment for smart contract development. Now we have already covered Solidity part 1, and these were in the part 2. So we are going to see part 3, where I've already created two blank files, modifier and constructor. So now let's first go and check the constructor file. We'll come to the modifier a little later. You might be wondering, if does the file always comes like this? No, it is usually a blank file. I've just copy pasted the statement and I've written it just to be prepared beforehand. And it is just a simple statement. It is the Spragma version which tells our contact that which Solidity version we are going to use. Okay, so now as per the rule, we first write contract and we give it the name. So I've explained it earlier that it's a good practice to always write the name same as a file name. Contract name is file name. So I'll write it contract constructor. So remember the first point. There can only be one and only one constructor in a contract, and a constructor is deployed whenever a constructor is called whenever a contract is deployed. So unlike functions, we are going to create the constructors do not need to be called. They'll be auto deployed. So let's first define a state variable. Now, as I said earlier, that I'm going to use the state variable, so you don't really need to worry that you missed the last hashing. But if you still really want to understand about the state variables in details, you can check our recordings. Now, we'll give some name to it and we'll define it public. Let's say we give it the name token supply, and we also write constructor public token address. Oh, sorry, event public, and it is not actually public. We need to give it something as address, because we will be passing an address of it. You might not be getting it, but in a after two or three sentences, it will start making sense. Now we'll write constructor. So the main part comes here. We are going to define the constructor here. So constructor. Now see, constructor is a keyword, and so it is of a different color with respect to other ones. So that's how you may know that your whatever you are writing, you are doing correct. So let's first write something which have no parameters. So it is going to be a nascent and rookie stage. So since there are going to be no parameters, we'll just open the basis, and we are going to provide the name as hard coded. Let's say the token supplies something like this, and the public the token address is similar to the address that we are going to use to deploy it. So which address are we going to use exactly? We will use Yes, you copy this address from here and write it down, and let's see. So now you might see that there is a warning or error. So let you guys guess and in 5 seconds that what the error is. So let's wait for 5 seconds. One. Okay, so if you might have guessed, give yourself a pat because we are using the same name token supplier 2 times. Now we want to change it to address. So the spelling is wrong here. Okay, so we have to change it to token address. And here, see, the error is gone. And now we are going to go and deploy our contract. And remember, we are not calling anything. We have just deployed our contract. But when we go and check the value, we see that it is already assigned. So that's the power of a constructor actually. That's what a constructor does. Now there can be more type of constructor. There can be a parameterized constructor as well. So let's see how to create a parameterized constructor as well, where you won't need, where you might not need to pass the value hard coded. You want yourself to provide the value when you're going to deploy it. So how does it work? Let's see. So for example, you have written again constructor, and in here you're going to pass it a value. So since we are using uint and address as state variables, so we'll be also passing uint and address in here as local variables as well. So let's write a token and uint the address and uint token address. Cool. Now let's pass the token supply here and give it the value token. And let's pass token address here and give it the value token address. And we see that we might be having some error. So let's see what the error is. So I'll let you guys decide what the error is for 3 to 4 seconds, and then I'll solve it. Now you may see there is we are using wrong kind of closing closings here. So we are actually using square brackets. Instead we need to use these. So you get my point basically. What I'm trying to say is the more error you make while writing it, the more you get to know about it. Now you see the error is gone, and even I didn't even had to go and look in the error area. So if, for example, if you do not know, if I remove here, then I'll start seeing an error here. So that's how it works. I'll remove the error and I'll go and deploy the contract. So I've deployed my contract. Now to deploy it, I'm not able to deploy. Why? But earlier I was able to deploy this contract because, as I've told earlier, a constructor is called as soon as a contract is deployed. Now when I'm deploying it, I'm not passing any values right now, which is given here. I'm not passing any one of this. So let's, why not go and pass some value like 1 2 3 4 5 as the token, and let's say any address from here and copy it, and we pass it into the token address and then call transact. Now we see our constructor is deployed, and let's go and check the values. So the token address is this and the token supply is this. Cool, makes sense. Now let's go and try to see modifiers. Now you might be wondering why I'm using modifier after, because let's include modifiers in the constructors. So now we know that exactly why we are like how we can use construct modifiers inside a constructor, because from now we are moving on to the more advanced section. So let's make a contract. And as I've explained earlier, modifier is something that you use to remove the redundancy in the code. And specifically, modifiers are used for functions that are in the NFT world. Modifiers are used for the functions that only owner needs to access. For example, those functions can be like transfer ownership. So if you want to transfer your ownership, you won't really need the public to make it transfer ownership, right? You would want that only specific people or the people who have deployed the contract can only pass the ownership. So for certain functions, you may use what modifiers. Now let's try to create one modifier. So we'll create a contract by the name modifier. Cool. And first let's go and delete all these transactions. Okay, so we have created it. And okay, so we'll first create a constructor, and inside the constructor we'll say that owner is equal to message dot sender. Now I am already seeing an error. That's because I haven't defined owner anywhere here. So I'll define address public owner. Now we don't see any error. So let's first deploy this and see what is exactly happening. So when I deploy it, I get the owner equal to the message.sender, which is the address that I'm used to call the function. If I change this address from this to something like this, and then I'll deploy again, now in this case, the owner will be different to the address that I've changed. So that's what global variable. So that was I was saying that if you missed our previous session, then also no worries because we have used both, all three of the state variables, local variables, and global variables in this lecture itself. Now let's go and create a modifier. So to create the modifier, we need to write the keyword modifier. Then only the the compiler is going to know that you are creating a modifier, and let's give it any name. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to give it a name only owner. That if I'm going to add this modifier to any functions, so only certain owners are going to access it. And who is the certain owner? The owner that have called the contract. That means only one owner can call this function. Now, what first thing is what? Write a require statement. What is a require statement? As the name says, it makes the statement inside the parenthesis to be must be used. It must be required string. So we'll say that the message dot sender equal to owner, and if not, we'll give passive error, not the owner of the contract, and we'll end it with semicolon and then something like this. Cool. So kudos to you. You've just created your first modifier. Now, how you are going to use this modifier? So you are going to use the modifier inside a function. So let's say that you create a function uh, to set owner. That okay. Let's use a same word transfer ownership that we mostly use in the NFT development world. So you create a transfer ownership function. Now inside this function, you would uh, pass an address where you are going to, which is going to be a new owner, and you will make it public, and you will give it only owner. And the first statement is going to be obviously require statement, and in require statement we'll say that the message dot sender is a good check. So you will check that the message dot sender is not equal to address 0, and if it turns out to be some of to be one of the address 0, then it will show an error, not an, let's say, invalid address. Then it will go ahead and then it will set the owner is equal to new owner, new owner. Now let's go and deploy a contract and see how it works. So we'll close these contracts for the sake of clarity and let's deploy it. So it is now deployed and let's see first the owner. So the owner of this contract is this. Now what if someone wants to call this and I want to transfer ownership to some different address, but I'm a random person. Let's take this address. So if I'm going to call and I want to transfer the ownership to my function. So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to hack the smart contract because I am someone from an outside and I want to transfer the ownership of the function to myself so that I can withdraw all the funds in the contract. So I'll write the address here and I'll click transact. But were we able to transact? No. Why? Because it says not the owner of the contract, which is just the message similar to the message that we pass in a modifier. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, uh, for example, there are thousands, not thousand, like yes, I mean you can write thousand functions, but if there are hundreds of functions that require only owner to call them, then at every function you may not necessarily need to write this code block. You can reduce this code block by making it as a modifier and just using it here in the function. So that's what I was trying to say. Now let's see if we try to pass it from the address that is actually the owner of the address. So I think so. I've lost the address. Okay, this is the address, and let's transact use this address. Okay, now we are going to set this address as the new owner. So are we able to do? No. So I'm choosing the wrong address on the function itself. Okay, cool. I think so. This is the address that we use while deploying the contract. That was the address that we use, and the ownership is now passed. So now just here and check if has the owner changed or not. And kudos to you, it has changed. So perfect. You have just created uh, a modifier, and also you have also prevented a hack to happen. A hack that could mainly lead to the exploitation of your contract. So definitely, you also saw how to use a constructor, and within the constructor, you also saw that how to use a constructor and a modifier together. So that was for the today's lesson, and let's hope to see you in the next one.
All right. So thank you, Hemang, for that. All right. So we have this Solidity programming that is modifiers and constructors. So any questions so far, guys, for our coach for today, Hemang? Anyone? So okay, so guys, I'll update the I missed to update the previous recordings in the forum channel, so I'll be uploading those today in the forum channels, the links. So yeah, in case you missed some of the lessons, you can always come back to those lessons. All right. So thank you, Hemang, for today's lesson. So yeah, I think there's no questions for today from the
Uh,
audience at the moment.
yeah, thank you guys for attending the lesson. Thank you, Chris, for having me here, and it was a great one.
So thank you everyone. So see you again on the next lessons, and then bye bye guys. Have a
Bye, bye,
nice
guys. See you
weekend.
all again.
Have a nice weekend, guys.